Imagine that everything you call your life exists only because your mind has drawn invisible lines where reality never did. The line between you and me, the line between yesterday and today, the line between life and death, the line between success and failure. We spend our entire lives defending these boundaries as if they are woven into the fabric of the universe. But what if they exist only because our minds need them? What if the greatest illusion is not something you see, but the very way you see? If you've ever looked at an old photograph and felt like you were staring at a completely different person, you've already encountered this mystery. If you've ever wondered why something that once seemed so important suddenly became meaningless years later, you've already seen reality shifting beneath your feet. You probably believe your identity has remained the same throughout your life. But has it? Or has your mind simply stitched together countless different versions of yourself into one continuous story? By the end of this video, you'll understand why many of history's greatest philosophical traditions argued that the world we experience is not reality itself, but a useful map drawn by the human mind. You'll begin to see why identity, meaning, and even time may be far more fluid than they first appear. And perhaps, if only for a moment, you'll experience the strange freedom that comes from realizing that what feels absolutely real may simply be one way of looking at existence. From the moment we are born, the mind begins drawing boundaries. Before we know language, before we understand society, the world is simply colors, sounds, warmth, movement, and sensation. There is no me. There is no you. There is only experience unfolding. But gradually, our parents point toward us and repeat our name. They teach us where our body ends and where everyone else's begins. They tell us what belongs to us and what belongs to others. They explain what is right and wrong, what is valuable and worthless, what is success and failure. Slowly, almost invisibly, reality becomes divided into categories. These categories are incredibly useful. Without them, we couldn't survive. We couldn't communicate. We couldn't build civilizations. We couldn't even cross the street safely. But usefulness and ultimate reality are not necessarily the same thing. A map helps you navigate a city, but nobody mistakes the map for the city itself. Perhaps the mind works in exactly the same way. Think about money. A $100 bill is only paper with ink on it, yet millions of people wake up every morning, experience stress, sacrifice time with their families, and even go to war because everyone collectively agrees that this paper represents value. Remove the shared belief, and the paper loses almost all of its meaning overnight. Identity works in surprisingly similar ways. When someone asks who you are, what do you say? Perhaps your name, your profession, your nationality, your religion, your political beliefs, your personality. But none of these existed when you were born. Every one of them emerged through your relationship with other people, your culture, your family, your education, and the historical period into which you happen to arrive. Had you been born 500 years ago, your beliefs would almost certainly be different. Had you been born in another country, another language would feel natural. Another religion might feel unquestionably true. Another definition of success would shape your ambitions. So, which one is the real you? Or is the self more like a river, always changing while appearing continuous? Imagine a woman who has spent 30 years believing she is a successful lawyer. One day she retires. Within months, she begins feeling lost. Not because she forgot how to think, but because one layer of identity disappeared. The suffering isn't created by retirement itself. It's created by the collapse of a story that once organized her entire world. We all live inside stories. Some stories help us grow. Some stories imprison us. A father believes he must always appear strong. A teenager believes popularity determines self-worth. An entrepreneur believes failure would make life meaningless. None of these beliefs are physical objects, yet they influence emotions more powerfully than almost anything we can touch. The mind creates realities that become emotionally real. This doesn't make them fake, it makes them psychological. Now consider something even stranger. What exactly is the present moment? By the time you hear these words, they already belong to the past. Before you finish thinking about the future, it has become the present. The present seems impossible to hold. It continuously slips away. Our brains divide experience into past, present, and future because this organization helps us remember, predict, and survive. Without memory, we couldn't learn. Without anticipation, we couldn't plan. But the universe itself doesn't place labels on moments. Those labels arise through human perception. The same may be true for many of the boundaries we consider unquestionable. Look at a sunset. Where exactly does day end and night begin? There is no single second when the universe flips a switch. We create the boundary because gradual change is difficult for the mind to process. Think about childhood becoming adulthood. Exactly when does one become the other? There is no precise moment. Nature flows. The mind divides. Nature flows. The mind divides. This simple pattern explains much of human conflict. We divide people into races, nations, religions, political tribes, generations, winners, losers, successful, unsuccessful. Once those categories become emotionally real, we begin defending them as though our survival depends on them. Perhaps this is why two neighbors can stop speaking over politics, why families become divided over inheritance, why strangers on social media insult people they have never met. The categories become more important than the people. Yet underneath those categories, everyone laughs, fears, loves, ages, loses loved ones, worries about their children, and hopes tomorrow will be kinder than today. The differences are real, but perhaps the deeper commonality is even more real. Modern psychology offers an interesting perspective here. Our brains are prediction machines. They constantly simplify an overwhelmingly complex world into patterns that help us function. Without simplification, we'd be paralyzed by information. We couldn't make decisions. We couldn't recognize faces. We couldn't even walk through a crowded street. The brain doesn't present reality exactly as it is. It presents a version of reality that is useful enough for survival. Useful enough. Not necessarily complete. Imagine wearing tinted glasses your entire life. After enough years, you would stop noticing the tint. You would simply call it reality. Maybe every human being wears invisible cognitive glasses. Not because we're flawed, because we're human. Now, let's approach the question that frightens nearly everyone. Death. Why does death feel so terrifying? Part of the answer is obvious. We fear pain. We fear separation. We fear leaving the people we love. But perhaps we also fear something deeper. We fear the disappearance of the story called me. Our identities are built slowly across decades. Our memories, achievements, relationships, regrets, ambitions, and beliefs weave together into one narrative. Death appears to end that narrative. From this perspective, death doesn't merely end biological life. It dissolves an identity. Throughout history, many spiritual traditions suggested that this identity was never the deepest layer of reality in the first place. They didn't necessarily deny the existence of the individual. Instead, they questioned whether the individual is the whole story. Imagine a wave rising from the ocean. For a moment, it has a unique shape. It can point to itself and say, "I am this wave." It may compare itself with other waves. It may feel proud for becoming larger or ashamed for becoming smaller. But what happens when the wave returns to the ocean? Did something disappear? Or did the form simply change? Whether one accepts this metaphor literally, spiritually, or simply poetically, it invites a profound question. What if our deepest fear comes from mistaking temporary forms for permanent realities? This doesn't mean your relationships don't matter. It doesn't mean your dreams are meaningless. Quite the opposite. Knowing something is temporary often makes it infinitely more precious. A parent doesn't love their child less because childhood ends. A friendship isn't meaningless because one day it will end. A sunset isn't less beautiful because darkness follows. Impermanence doesn't erase meaning, it transforms it. Perhaps meaning was never something hidden inside the universe waiting to be discovered. Perhaps it emerges through living, through loving, through creating, through helping, through experiencing. It is less like a treasure buried underground and more like music that exists only while it is being played. Maybe this is why two people can live through the exact same event and find completely different meanings in it. One sees failure, another sees growth. One sees rejection, another sees redirection. Reality provides the experience. The human mind creates the interpretation. And interpretation is astonishingly powerful. Think about your own life. How many things once seemed like disasters that later became turning points? How many people you desperately wanted to impress no longer occupy your thoughts? How many worries quietly dissolved without asking your permission? The stories changed, you changed, the world changed. Yet something continued witnessing every chapter. Maybe that silent awareness is closer to who you are than any label you've ever defended. Perhaps the greatest freedom isn't discovering who you are. Perhaps it is becoming less attached to every story about who you think you are. Because once the boundaries soften, something unexpected happens. Compassion becomes easier. Forgiveness becomes possible. Curiosity replaces certainty. Life becomes less about protecting an identity and more about participating in existence itself. Maybe that is what so many philosophers and sages were pointing toward. Not an escape from reality, but a different way of seeing it. A way of recognizing that the walls separating self from other, success from failure, and certainty from uncertainty may not be as solid as they first appear. And perhaps that is the quiet invitation hidden within every human life. Not to abandon the stories, not to reject the world, but to remember that they are stories. To play your role fully, love deeply, work sincerely, and care generously, while never forgetting that the stage itself is far larger than any one character. Because maybe the greatest illusion is not that the world deceives us. Maybe the greatest illusion is believing that the boundaries drawn by the mind are the boundaries of reality itself. And once you glimpse that possibility, even for a single moment, the world doesn't disappear. It simply becomes much bigger than you ever imagined. Thank you for watching. Please comment, share, and subscribe for more videos.